Good morning, it's Leah. Welcome back to the Nourish Sensitive podcast. It is 7 o'clock in the morning where I am, and I have my little cup of tea ready, and I'm ready to record this podcast episode. But before we jump in, I have a lot to share with you today. Before we jump in, I wanted to do just a little bit of breath work, some grounding, and just kind of take a moment to reconnect with ourselves because we're going to get into a lot in this episode. You're going to learn a lot, but I also want you to really ground into this topic and start out by reconnecting with your body. So I just invite you, before we jump in, to take a deep breath, begin to soften your shoulders, relax your jaw, and just arrive here into your body. You can close your eyes, put your feet on the floor, bring your tongue off the roof of your mouth, rest your hands softly in your lap, and just take a moment to arrive. Relax into your body, listen. And as you do that, I want you to ask yourself, when was the last time I really listened to my body in an intuitive kind of way? Felt it, noticed its rhythms, its cycles. Not in a perfect kind of way, but just in a gentle checking in throughout the day. When did I really feel like I was living in that way? And if the answer is every day, that's how I am, well, wonderful. Keep doing that. And if the answer is it's been a while, I've been rushing or I've been busy, noticing things here and there, but not really attending to them, then this episode is for you, to help you get back into your rhythm, get back into sync with your body. So take another deep breath, and I'm going to pause the music. And we'll get started. So today's topic is living in sync, the art of cyclical living, honoring our body's natural rhythms, and I also want to talk a little bit about PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, as this is something that I've been seeing more and more in my work with patients and clients who come to me for holistic health and healing and nutrition. And I've also been thinking a lot about rhythm and cycles in my own life. It's springtime, early spring. It's still winter, but it's starting to feel a little bit like spring here in New England. And I'm from New England and love the 4 seasons that we have here. I've lived in different parts of the world where the seasons are not quite as distinct. And I've always appreciated that here in this part of the world, in this little corner of the US, I get to experience the seasons in all of their distinctness. It really has a way of connecting you to the shifts inside yourself and the cycles that your body goes through as the weather and the seasons change. But the thing is, in our modern world, we're expected to be the same every day. We're expected to produce, we're expected to move quickly, meet our deadlines, do things in a linear fashion. And Especially if you're highly sensitive, this disconnection from rhythm and cycle can be really depleting. And while this topic that we're going to talk about today applies mostly to women, because women's bodies are designed to move through cycles rather than in a linear fashion, this also applies to men and to all humans, because the truth is the way that we've designed our societies and how we work and how we live is not really beneficial to anyone's health, and especially to women. And this is something that's really been coming up in my work. The women that I've been working with and attracting to, work with me have been experiencing a lot of disorder in their cycle. I've recently discovered this passion that around PCOS, and this desire to really learn more about that condition, because I see in my female patients how deeply it's affecting them on every level to be living out of sync and to be suffering from these chronic disease states where they don't get regular periods and their digestion is really poor and their mood is off and they're always tired. And it's just really awakened this desire in me to understand what cyclical living actually means and what's really at the root of conditions like PCOS, and how can we honor our rhythms in a world that is really not designed that way. I always say that we can't always change the circumstances that we find ourselves in, but we always have control over the way that we respond and the way that we educate ourselves on things that we can do to support our bodies as we work towards change and resistance of the systems that tend to be oppressive towards us. So that's kind of what we're going to get into today. And really my intention for this episode is just exploring that, exploring why living out of sync with our natural cycles affects our health, and what shifts when we can start listening to ourselves again. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how your menstrual cycle mirrors the seasons of nature, and why this connection matters for your energy, your mood, and your metabolism. We're going to talk about what can happen when we ignore our body's cues too often, and how that can show up in conditions like PCOS, burnout, and nervous system dysregulation. I'll share a little bit of my own personal story of living out of sync with my body and what changed when I really started paying closer attention. We'll do a little bit of a dive into PCOS for my own purposes. I'm still learning about this myself, what it is, beyond the conventional narrative, how it affects metabolism and sensitivity, and why highly sensitive bodies may be more impacted by this condition. And then I will give you just some practical, gentle ways to support your body through each phase of your cycle, how to start listening to your body in small everyday ways, even if you feel a little disconnected right now. And then we'll close with a gentle prayer and an invitation to go deeper into this work together in community. So this episode ties into a couple of the different elements from my 9 Elements of Nourishment framework, which is a holistic framework I developed in my work with sensitive clients that brings together 9 different elements that help us nurture a positive relationship with our mind, our body, and with our spirit to promote holistic wellness and growth. So the elements that relate to this episode come from the mind, body, and spirit categories. We have holistic nutrition, digestive health, which are our physical body elements. And of course, when we think about living in rhythm with our cycle and with the seasons, nutrition and the flow of our digestion is really going to play into that. So we're going to get into those elements a little bit here. And then from the spirit category of the 9 Elements framework, we have embodiment, optimal living, and spiritual growth. So if you think about connecting with your body, grounding into your body, this is a core element of this topic today. And also the idea of living optimally, living in alignment with your body's rhythms, the seasons outside, with life itself. And the last element, spiritual growth, when we are able to do this consistently and find our way back to ourselves, we experience a kind of spiritual awakening, a deepening of our inner knowing, and a connection to ourselves that allows us to grow and shine our light more brightly in the world. So this is a very nourishing episode. It covers a lot of the different elements in my framework, and I think you're going to find it really helpful. So before we jump in more to the topic, I wanted to share my personal story of living out of sync with my body and how it sort of, the body has a way of bringing you to your knees when you're fighting against it. It has its own kind of intelligence, its own kind of wisdom, and this is exactly what happened with me. So to bring you back to this time, I was living here in Maine. It was the winter, very long winter, very cold. And I had been living in Seattle prior to this, so I wasn't quite used to or fully adjusted to the deep, bone-chilling winters of Maine, especially the northern part of the state. And my partner and I were living in a little cabin that my parents own. And it's a very old cabin. It was built in, I think, the 40s. And so we were cozy in there, but it was a small space, and the winter was so long, and I was feeling very cooped up. And I was really struggling with my health at that time. I really wasn't working on my business or really working at all. My partner was supporting us, and I just felt like I was running on empty. I wasn't really listening to my body. I knew that I was in pain and that my health was suffering, but I wasn't always tapping into it and really listening. And so it just kept getting worse and worse. And it felt like this mystery to me. Like I just didn't understand why my digestion was so poor and I couldn't sleep and I was so stressed out. Like I wasn't getting any answers from the doctors and health practitioners that I was working with. And so I was really just kind of suffering, to be completely honest. And the turning point was when it was getting closer to spring, probably actually right around the time that I'm recording this episode in like early March. And my partner was leaving. He was going away on a business trip, and I was going to be alone for the week. And I was looking forward to that, but I was also a little bit nervous because just a few days, actually just the day prior, I had badly cut my hand while doing dishes, and the wound was quite bad, and it was very painful, and it was in the early stages of healing, which often are more painful than the later stages. And I was just feeling really, really vulnerable, and on top of my other health issues and starting my period, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be an interesting week. So my partner left, and it had also been raining for weeks and weeks at this point, and I'm not kidding. We hadn't seen the sun in probably 4 weeks. It just was raining every single day, very rainy spring in New England. And as a sensitive person, I'm very in tune with the weather and the seasons, and it was like, that was just another layer to the intensity of how I was feeling at this point in time with my partner leaving. And I was trying to do some things to support myself. I made a massage therapy appointment, and I had reached out to my friend to see if she wanted to spend some time together. But the universe just had other plans for me that week, and ultimately it was exactly what I needed. So what ended up happening was the day that my massage appointment came and I was supposed to see my friend, it actually ended up getting canceled because this is just crazy. The place that I was going to is called Heart Space, and it was just a little place in town. And there had been a car crash the night before that went into the building. The building wasn't like destroyed, but it had crashed into the foundation of the building and cracked it. So I wasn't able to go to my massage appointment because Heart Space cracked open, which is just on a metaphorical level, it just felt so strange but also symbolic of what was about to happen in my life, of just my heart cracking open and reconnecting with myself and my body, and finally getting some of the answers that I wasn't, that I was searching for. And my friend also had to cancel our plans. Something happened with her dog. And I was feeling really upset because it felt like nothing I did to try to support myself and like take care of what I was needing was working out. I was like really upset and really resisting the universe. And I was like crying because the rain just kept pouring down, and it just felt so like I was being forced to stay in, to get still. Like I was being forced to finally feel everything that I had been avoiding. There was no one to distract me. There was nowhere to be. I couldn't go anywhere. I had to just be with myself. And it was in this moment that I realized that my body wasn't betraying me. It was trying to communicate with me, and it was being really, in a way, it was being really intense about that need. And so what happened was the only way I can describe it is I was brought to my knees. I had to surrender, and I got in the shower, and I was having an extreme amount of pain from my period. I was having really intense cramps, and that's unusual for me. I usually have pretty mild to moderate pain during my periods. But this time I got out of the shower, and it was just rough. I was feeling so raw and vulnerable, and I just kind of collapsed on the bed in my towel, and I was like, I surrender. Like, I'm not in control here. And as I did that, I fell asleep. I just closed my eyes, laying there wet in my towel, and fell asleep. And a couple hours later, I woke up, my eyes open, and I was like, whoa, just that feeling of like what happened. And the first thing I felt was warmth. And I opened my eyes and I looked up, and the sun was shining directly on my face. It was one of the most profound spiritual experiences that I had ever had. And as I was coming to and really getting back into my body from sleep, I realized that the pain was gone. And it was just profound. It's almost even hard to put it into words now. And I went outside and I sat down on the ground, just kind of taking in the sun, because it had been so long since I had felt it. And I sat there for probably about 20 minutes, and I came inside, and I'm not joking, as soon as I walked in the door and shut the door, it started raining again. So I share this very intimate story with you to highlight how life has a way of bringing us back to ourselves, even when we're fighting against it. And if you've ever felt like your body is working against you in some of the ways that I've described here, just know that you are not alone. And sometimes these symptoms that we experience, these pains that we go through, these chronic illnesses that might come up in our life are just messages leading us back to back home to ourselves and to the wisdom in our bodies. So I want to jump now into the main conversation of this episode, which is understanding our cycle and how when we get out of sync with that process as women, especially, and as sensitive people, what can kind of happen, and exploring some of the root causes of conditions like PCOS. So PCOS, or polycystic ovary syndrome, is one of the most common hormonal conditions that affect women and people with cycles. But honestly, in my work with women who have this condition, I feel like it's also one of the most misunderstood conditions. Many people think of PCOS as just a hormonal disorder, but at its core, it's actually a metabolic and nervous system condition. So PCOS affects how we process our energy in terms of our blood sugar and energy levels and our insulin regulation. Insulin is a hormone that regulates our blood sugar. PCOS affects our nervous system and how we respond to stress. It affects our digestion and our gut microbiome. And it has a major impact on the inflammation in our body, our immune function, our mood, and our sleep. And I find myself really interested in this condition because For one, it's a condition that really highlights how interconnected the body is. Women that I meet with this condition, they don't just have blood sugar problems, they have stress, digestive issues, their body's inflamed, they can't sleep, they have constant brain fog. And so there's so much complexity to it and so much that we have to work through in order to get them to a place where they're able to feel really good again, and be able to manage their condition effectively. What I see again and again in these clients who are newly diagnosed, many of them are on hormonal birth control and they've never even had the opportunity to understand their natural cycle. And as soon as they're diagnosed with this condition, most conventional doctors will just get them started again on birth control, whether that's the pill or sometimes they see IUDs. And this can be really, what I've seen in some of my patients is it can be really traumatic for them. Their system is already in a lot of pain, and trying to put an IUD in right after that diagnosis, it can often be more painful and also emotionally overwhelming. So many are not given that opportunity to really understand their actual menstrual cycle before it's being influenced by the hormonal additions. I also see that their eating is often erratic, and a lot of my patients are eating a high amount of processed foods, which is not a problem necessarily or a bad thing, but it's something that we have to gradually work on in bringing them back to a sense of balance and ease in their body, because these kinds of eating patterns can lead to blood sugar crashes and inflammation. And what I notice is that there's this very delicate process of helping them understand their body, understand their body's rhythms, how their blood sugar rises and falls throughout the day, and how the choices that they make in terms of their eating and their habits impact that. So it's really a beautiful process of homecoming and teaching these women how to relearn their body's cycle and their body's rhythms. I also see them having a struggle with pushing themselves past their limits. A lot of these women struggle with setting healthy boundaries and people pleasing and really staying focused on other people's needs above their own, which leads to these sort of symptoms of adrenal fatigue, chronic stress, imbalances in their digestion, getting sick a lot. And so the conversation I typically have with them early on is just about their own needs and how their body is telling them that it's time to pay attention and to start to set some limits on how much they're giving, because this condition really demands attention to self and attention to what the body is calling for, and really deepening into the symptoms that you're experiencing and understanding what might be contributing to this. So I see these things again and again in these female clients, and many of them are very sensitive and are struggling to navigate the medical system with just the way that it operates and get answers. And it's honestly an honor to be able to guide them through that process of understanding that their body, especially as if they're sensitive, is already finely tuned. They already feel things really deeply. They tend to be more affected by stress and sensitivities and changes in their routines. And they can use that. They can use that sensitivity and their ability to feel things really deeply to, in essence, heal themselves and bring this condition back to a state of balance and ease. So PCOS is not just a physical thing. It's an emotional thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's, your whole world can feel like it's off when you're living out of alignment with your body's natural rhythms and the cycle of your cycles as a woman. So why PCOS and living out of sync can impact highly sensitive people more deeply? Just expanding on that a little bit. Of course, HSPs tend to be more naturally attuned to their environment. Our nervous systems process sensory and emotional stimuli more intensely. So this can mean that any imbalance in the body, whether it's a hormonal imbalance or feeling, extra stressed, can impact our health more deeply than the average person. And when we, as sensitive people, live out of sync with our natural cycles, it can really feel like our entire body is just off. We might experience mood swings, heightened anxiety, emotional dysregulation, fatigue, a hard time recovering from stress. Our digestion can be dysfunctional, so we might have bloating, an appetite that's just all over the place, whether we're eating too much or too little, and also IBS-like symptoms. When we go to the bathroom, we might experience more sensitivity to crashes in our blood sugar and also spikes. So just that inconsistent energy level throughout the day. And this can also lead to cravings and energy dips, a sense of chronic fatigue, like we can't manage our energy. And it can also lead to feeling wired but tired from that adrenal overdrive, that pumping cortisol throughout our body, and that sense of burnout. So, of course, if you're not sensitive and you have PCOS, this is going to affect you too. But I think when you're a deep feeler and you're really in sync with what's happening inside your body and you're attuned to the stimuli, it's going to be an even more intense experience for you. And part of healing is using your natural gifts, your ability to tune in, to listen to those symptoms and gradually take baby steps to come back to yourself. And it's not just about what we eat. It's about how we live. It's about how we show up for ourselves, and it's about how we take care of ourselves holistically. We want to get out of the downward spiral of stress and inflammation and imbalance, and we really want to get into a cycle that our bodies are built for. I think underneath all the technical jargon and the statistics and the science of this condition, the real issue is that we were never taught to trust our bodies. And we're also not conditioned or encouraged to listen and trust our bodies when they're telling us that something is wrong. We're more conditioned to go to an authority figure and be told exactly what to do. And this leads us to override our needs. It leads us to push through exhaustion, ignore our hunger, and live by external expectations and rules rather than our internal rhythms and what we know nourishes us. But healing isn't about controlling our body. It's about coming home to it. So now that we understand a little bit more about what it looks like to live out of sync with our bodies, I want to give you sort of an outline on how to support yourself, how to come home, and how to start listening to the cycles that are happening within you and start to get in sync with them. So I want to explore the 4 seasons of your menstrual cycle, and this is for women who have cycles, but it can also apply to anyone who lives in sync with the seasons of nature. And I think the real message here is that your body is always speaking to you. And when you really start listening, you'll notice something really beautiful. Your cycles, whether your menstrual cycle or your day-to-day routine, it follows the same kind of natural rhythm as the earth. Each phase of your cycle isn't just a hormonal shift, it also affects your energy levels, your mood and your emotions, your metabolism and your digestion, your energy levels, and your nervous system regulation. And for highly sensitive people, these shifts can feel even more intense because our bodies are more responsive to internal and external stimuli. So instead of resisting these shifts, we can work with them to create more ease and balance in our lives. So I'm going to walk you through each phase of the menstrual cycle, highlighting what season it is, what's happening in the body, how it might feel, and how to support yourself through that phase. And I'll also have a little affirmation for this phase if you are into that kind of thing. So the first phase of our menstrual cycle is the menstrual phase, and this is known as our inner winter, and it typically lasts in an average, 28-day cycle, about 1 to 6 days. It starts on the first day of bleeding, when you begin your period, and it ends around day 5 or 6 when your follicular phase begins. So again, the menstrual phase is winter. It's our inner winter. This means rest, release, introspection, deep nourishment, kind of retreating into the darkness and the rest like you would in the winter. In the body, what's happening around this time? So this is when our hormones estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest, which is going to have some effects on how we feel. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in this yet, but just kind of noting the highlights there that those two hormones are at their lowest while we're bleeding and during our menstrual phase. This is when the uterine lining is shedding. So we're letting go, we're releasing things that we no longer need. The body is very inward focused. Energy is naturally lower. I typically feel this pretty intensely. When I start my period, I feel like my energy drops off a cliff, and the implication is it's time to rest. It's time to slow down. It's time to go inward. And the nervous system is often more sensitive and a little more easily overstimulated around this time for multiple reasons. If we are in pain, we're going to be a little more sensitive to things. So this is a really good time to, like I said, nourish yourself, rest, and take care. Like you would sitting around a hearth in the winter with a cup of tea and a bowl of soup going on the stove. Your energy is going to be lower, so because your body is using resources to shed and renew itself, you might feel some heightened emotions and intuition around this time. You might feel more reflective, a little more introverted or emotional, a little teary-eyed, and you have an increased need for warmth and comfort and quiet. So how to support yourself through this season of winter, this first phase of your menstrual cycle? Like I said, resting more than usual. If possible, lighten your schedule and try to avoid pushing yourself. It's not always possible. When I'm on my period, I try to decrease the amount of patients that I'm holding space for that week and my client work. I try to not make as many appointments where I'm going to have to leave the house, and I just try to take it a little easier, even if I'm working that week. This is also a time to eat warm, nourishing foods. So again, think winter. This could be broths, stews, roasted root veggies, iron-rich meals like lentils or grass-fed beef to get some of that iron. Yeah, because you're bleeding and you're going to lose some of that, and that can sometimes cause you to lose some energy. So really nourishing yourself and consuming foods that are easier on your digestion. It's also great around this time to reduce overstimulation, soft lighting, cozy blankets. Trying to limit your screen time in the evenings can all be really restorative. And this is also a time to journal, reflect, and set intentions. Because energetically your body is letting go, it's shedding, it's renewing, and so it's opening up a space for newness, for setting those intentions. And because you're very inward, this is where your intuition can feel really strong. So this is a great time while you're resting and kind of taking it easy to do some inner work. I would also suggest avoiding intense exercise during this time. Gentle movement. I really love yin yoga, and you can find, free videos on YouTube. Also stretching and walking, just kind of taking it easy, like I said. So for this phase of the cycle, my affirmation is, I allow myself to rest and receive. Slowing down is sacred. So if that's the phase you're in right now, you can sit with that affirmation. Okay, so the next phase in our cycle is the follicular phase, and this is where the follicle, the new egg, starts to develop. We've just shed our uterine lining, the old egg from our previous cycle, and now the new follicle that holds that egg, or the egg itself, is starting to develop. So this is your inner spring, right? If you think about like baby chicks hatching in the spring or little seedlings coming out of the soil, this is where your energy is starting to rise. You might be experiencing new growth, more creativity, a sense of renewal. And And what's happening in the body around this time is your female hormones, sex hormones, estrogen, are starting to rise. And this kind of brings that renewed energy, that sense of, like a fresh air, new day, new spring energy. And the body is preparing itself for ovulation, which is when it releases that new egg. So our metabolism speeds up slightly, our mood can lift. This is often when we feel our best. And our nervous system and our brain function starts to improve, which can help increase our sense of creativity and our motivation. So for sensitive people, this might feel like, again, that increased energy, but it's important to take care not to overcommit yourself too quickly. You might have a lot of excitement and fresh ideas around this time. This is a great time for brainstorming and socializing, because you might feel more playful, more social, and a little more adventurous. So in this inner spring, by the way, this is from days 7 to 13 on average, you'll want to support yourself nutritionally by eating fresh, vibrant foods, so leafy greens, citrus fruits, fermented foods to support digestion, like kimchi and sauerkraut and yogurt, those kinds of things, kefir, and lean proteins. Again, this is your body, like its energy is rising. It's starting to bring in some renewed energy, and it needs that great nourishing nutrition to help support itself. Because the energy is rising, it's great to start to move your body in more playful ways around this time. So dancing, bringing in some light strength training and brisk walks outside if that's possible for you. Those intentions you set in your menstrual phase, it's a good time to start working on those new projects and setting some goals, because your brain is a little more focused and strategic around this time. It's also a good time to support yourself by engaging with people. Great time for networking, great time for dating and social gatherings. And the affirmation for your follicular phase or your inner spring is, I welcome growth and new beginnings. My energy is rising in harmony with life. So it's a beautiful time. And as difficult as it can be to live in a woman's body and get a period every 28 to 30 days or so, and kind of have to slow down, even though life is calling us to move faster, we also have these other wonderful phases that we go through, and we can celebrate that and be happy and grateful for the ways that our body takes care of us. So moving into the next phase, this is from days 14 through 18. This is our ovulatory phase. So this is really our inner summer. And this is when the body is releasing that egg. This is also the time that we might become pregnant if we are trying for that. And this phase, our inner summer, is all about expansion, confidence, connection, and peak energy. This is when you probably, your skin is glowing and you tend to feel just at your best, like you can show up as your full self. And your energy is really high. I think I've also read that ovulation is when women tend to feel like they're most attractive. So makes sense, right? This is the time where you can potentially become pregnant. So nature's trying to attract a mate. So around this time, estrogen and testosterone are peaking in the body. So those hormones, those sex hormones, are peaking, and this leads to high energy and social drive. You might even feel a little bit hyperactive around this time. That's something that I notice. I just have really intense, almost extroverted energy. The body is fertile. It's summertime. So your metabolism is at its highest. Things are flowing. You have more energy. Maybe your digestion is improved. You might have more of a natural positivity around this time. And so your communication skills and your interpersonal skills improve. Your digestion is typically at its strongest. If you think of your gut as a garden where lots of different things are growing and happening, it's very fertile at this time. So your food cravings might shift more towards light and fresh foods, like the kinds of things you would normally eat in summertime. So how this feels, especially for us sensitive folks, is a sense of confidence and charisma increases. This is when you will feel maybe your most magnetic. You tend to be a little more extroverted and expressive. And this is kind of fun because I think we sometimes fall into this myth that we're like always introverted. But my experience of being really in tune with my cycle is actually there are times of the month where I'm not really an introvert. I'm much more expressive and I'm much more interested in connecting with people. So this is a great time for, speaking up at work or public speaking. It's a good time for networking and dating and just putting yourself out there. It's higher energy, but at the same time, we also want to be mindful of not overextending ourselves because eventually autumn will come and winter will come, and we want to make sure that we're keeping that in a relative balance. So how to support yourself and your natural energy through this time? Eat like you would in the summer. Eat hydrating, cooling foods, fresh salads, bringing in some watery fruits and vegetables like berries, cucumbers, watermelon, fresh smoothies. Now, if it's wintertime where you actually are, maybe you play around with that a little bit, but the idea is, supporting your body in this high energy time through foods that are hydrating and cooling and nourishing. This is a good time to engage in high energy movement. So high intensity interval training, cardio, weightlifting, and in a masculine oriented world, we're like told to do this kind of stuff all the time. But if you are in tune with your body, this kind of exercise is extremely hard and detrimental to do while you're on your period or even in, the later phases of your cycle when things are slowing down. So you don't have to do this kind of intense exercise all the time. Do it when your body is at its highest, when it is actually welcoming that kind of intense exercise. Use this time for connection. So host events. If you're a business owner, this is a good time to do that kind of thing. Engage in deep conversations, collaborate. It's time to step into your leadership. Maybe this is when you do the big presentation at work, or you just chat more with your friends, catch up. It's a good time to make decisions and also to express yourself creatively. So through music or dance or art, writing, all of these are going to flow more easily when you are ovulating. So the affirmation for this phase is, I embrace my power and vitality, and my energy radiates outward. So sit with that right now especially if you're in your ovulatory phase. And lastly, we have our luteal phase. So I know a lot of us sensitive people, we love autumn. We love that time after summer's over where it's kind of like, okay, been busy, been moving around, having fun. Now it's time to go inward again and slow down. That's what this phase from days 19 through 28 is all about, your luteal phase. This is where the body is starting to prepare itself for the cycle to start over again, and for to shed that layer during our period. So what's happening in the body? Progesterone is rising. This is signaling the body to prepare for menstruation. And as progesterone rises, that's when we might see some of those early PMS symptoms, which are signals from the body to like slow down, start to go more inward. It's time. Energy naturally declines and the nervous system becomes more sensitive. Our mood can shift. We might have a little bit elevated emotional sensitivity, a lower tolerance for stress. The luteal phase is kind of like, oh geez, like, oh Lord, here it comes, like kind of thing. Like winter is coming. And our digestion can sometimes slow down because progesterone has an effect on the digestive tract. It might increase our cravings for comfort food. So this is a good time to like really root into your body and help your digestion keep processing well. This for sensitive people, this time might feel like you're easily overstimulated. Small things can feel a little more overwhelming. You might start craving more solitude, some rest, and deeper nourishment. And your intuition is picking up. This is a natural time for reflection. Think like cozy coffee shop vibes with like a notebook or something. So this inner autumn, this inner shedding, this slowing down, preparing for winter, this is all about supporting yourself through eating grounding, slow cooked meals. It's a great time to include more stews and warm Warm grains, root vegetables, and magnesium-rich foods to help support your nervous system. So those are things like dark chocolate, nuts, spinach, pumpkin seeds, all the kinds of things you would normally eat around fall. Again, slowing down. This is a good time for some gentle yoga, getting back into our stretching routines, our nature walks, starting to set boundaries and say no to anything that might be overstimulating us. Whereas in our ovulatory phase, we were saying yes to things and it felt very exciting. Now is the time to say no and start to protect your peace and your slowdown. Prioritizing deep rests. Sleep is really important during this phase because the body is starting to prepare itself for shedding. So really like prioritizing that, setting boundaries around your evening routine. And it's also a good time, just like in the autumn, to declutter and clear your space. So just like the trees are shedding leaves, this is a great time to let go of things that no longer serve you. Get rid of the clutter in your space, kind of like nesting and getting ready for that time in the winter where you're going to be cozy and inward. So the affirmation for this phase is, I honor my need for rest and reflection. I release what no longer serves me. So I hope this section of the podcast, this episode, was helpful of just going through the seasons and kind of like internalizing them a little bit more. And the intention here is to just to start to bring you more in sync with your inner cycles. And if you don't have a menstrual cycle, this is helping you understand how you might take better care of yourself in general and honor the season of life that you're in. You know, just some final thoughts here on cyclical living. Again, your body has a built-in rhythm, and this rhythm is deeply connected to nature. The more that you get in sync with it, you might even notice that it follows nature. What's happening outside your window is often affecting how you're feeling on your inside. And the more that you honor these natural shifts, the more ease, the more balance and vitality that you're going to experience. And if you're living with a chronic health condition like PCOS, the idea is not, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't cause this condition. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to listen to what your body is telling you and take really good care of it through the cycles of life and what you're experiencing day to day. So if you're just starting to track your cycle, just start by noticing your energy levels each day, maybe jotting down a few notes about your digestion, what you're eating, and how your body is responding. And over time, patterns will start to emerge. I hope this was a really supportive, practical, inspiring, gentle episode for you. I invite you to take another deep breath, grounding back into your body, promising yourself that you're going to take this in a little bit more, reflect on it, and maybe start to apply some of this in your life. And if this conversation resonated with you today, I want to personally invite you to our next Sensitive Sanctuary Circle inside the Neurosensitive Collective. We're going to be meeting again on Monday, March 10th. For this topic, living in sync with our cycles, and we'll do some gathering to explore, reflect, and heal together. This is a circle where you don't have to have things figured out. This is a place to connect with people like you, sensitive souls who get it. And like I said, in this upcoming circle, we'll be diving a little deeper into the wisdom of our cycles, how to nurture each phase. We'll talk through that as a group. We might share some stories about how our bodies speak to us. And whether you have a menstrual cycle or not, this practice of living cyclically applies to all of us. It's really just about learning to honor your body's natural rhythms, to embrace the flow of energy inside you, and to move through life with a little more intention and ease. You don't have to be a monthly member to join. This is open to anyone. There's a sliding scale cost to join us if you're not a member. It's $11 to $22. And there's no questions asked there. Just give what you know you can give. And if you can't even give the lower end of the sliding scale, reach out to me, because I allow one guest to join for free in any meeting as my guest. So if you're interested in being part of this and connecting with other sensitive people who are on this healing path together and working on themselves and learning more about how to live in sync with their body. You'll find the details in the show notes to reserve your spot in the circle. And I would love to hold space for you there. So to close out this episode, I wanted to just invite you to place a hand over your heart, and I'm going to read a closing prayer and reflection. You can say this aloud or whisper it softly, or just take in the words however they land for you. Dear body, dear wisdom, dear life itself, help me slow down. Help me trust that I don't need to rush. Help me remember that life moves in cycles, and I am allowed to move with it. May I listen when my body speaks. May I honor what it needs, not just when it's convenient, but always. May I trust that slowing down is not falling behind. And may I always, always know that I am not broken, that I am already whole. I honor the seasons within me. I trust that my body is always guiding me home. I allow myself to slow down when I need to, knowing that rest is sacred. I embrace the energy of creation when it flows through me. I am in tune with my rhythms, and I move with life instead of against it. And you can say amen, or so it is, whatever resonates with you to solidify that intention. Thank you for being here, for listening, for honoring yourself, for supporting my work. If this spoke to you, please send me a message on Instagram or on my website, nourishsensitive.com. Share your thoughts and come join us in community. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and remember, Nourish Sensitive, you are already whole.